player bases on certain days where there's more inexperienced players.
First time.
All of a sudden, like those games don't really run as well.
Yeah. And it's tough because those games, when they do run really well, they're awesome. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god.
That's a symptom of growth, right? 5-10 years ago when Zulu's average player count was 40 or 50, those guys were like loyal as fuck. They come every weekend. So if you said Dirty Mike Shack, they all knew what it was. I mean, even though we didn't have it back then, but they knew what it was. So you could create. So there wasn't a learning curve, right? They didn't have to learn where Dirty Mike Shack was. They already knew where it was. Therefore, giving them a follow-on task on top of that was a lot more simple to process, as opposed to a new player who's like, "Hey, go to Dirty Mike Shack. Once you get there, find the letter that's going to give you a code to go north and find this at this grid." And they're like, "Wait, I don't even know what team am I on?" You know what I mean? Like that. So that's kind of, it's a product of growth, and it's a product that we're continuously growing. And, it's a lot easier to explain something to 40 people than it is to 130 people, and make sure that everybody's got a good grasp of it, which is where the mentoring comes in, right? The old heads, the old players coming in who should have a vested interest in the sport by bringing up, because players curate the community. Right, we do our best to curate the etiquette, but the players really curate the community, right? And so, if they're inviting and bring people in and mentor them, so that even incrementally that new player gets a little bit better. Every time he comes, gets a little bit better and a little bit better, and then he mentors somebody, and they, his friend group and everything, and all of a sudden, you get to a potential spot where everybody's using like 9-line Kazivacs and everything, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit! Like,
I think one thing, like the boys, one thing that we have gotten in the habit of that's not helpful to what we're talking about is when there's an event and there's this opportunity where now the boys finally get to like play together.
Yeah,
we all just want to bunch up together.
Yeah, and
then there's all these different squads, but I think it should be promoted more that we do squad leaders, like we do it for Benghazi. We do it for these other ops, and all of a sudden, a really complicated game like Benghazi, which it's not super complicated, but it can be.
Yeah.
A game that requires that communication and dissemination of information, having the guys that know the field. We all know that we have radios that work.
Yeah.
We have our own backups for when we know our radios don't work.
Yeah.
Having squad leaders that can walk up to a ref and be like, "Hey, my radio's down. Got to keep the game going. Like, can I reach out to somebody?" That helps, because now putting people into squads that have a squad leader, really the squad leader, the only thing special about him is that he has a radio that works and we can get information. So if there's an objective, we have to get this thing from here. We're not spending 30 minutes trying to get to there through some back trail when the objective's been taken already, because we'll know, because we'll hear it over the radio.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we could totally do.
Well, but so from a player standpoint, right? So maybe you are a competent group of guys, right? Maybe you have 15 dudes. Are you really going to want some other dude leading you? No, because there's with every group of people, there's one person that usually stands out, and everybody recognizes and respects, right? And so they're going to be the leaders. So I think it's important to have players be leaders.
I agree with that. I think part of that is that bow fangs are very cheap. We should just have a couple on standby, and just issue it out and say, "Hey, just return it at the end of the event or something."
Yeah.
Now, like bow fang's not super expensive. It's the comms. A lot of the times, it's the tech that fails, and that causes a whole bunch of just hoopla, or people lose it. The funniest thing, the biggest thing I see that makes people give up on radios is they get so dead set on this idea of having the radio in their pouch and then putting the clear earpiece in.
Yeah.
And then they realize how uncomfortable it is. And then all of a sudden, because
they just take it out.
Because they can't have the earpiece, they don't even want to bother with it anymore, because they just think having a radio,
dude, the Code Red,
be loud.
The Code Red boom mic, is perfect.
The Baofeng ones suck. Code Red ones.
Yeah.
It has never given me away. You guys, okay, so as staff, you guys have this sixth sense to know exactly when I'm sneaking up on somebody, and then you guys are just like, "Hey, so what do you want to do for lunch?" And I keep my radio at like a medium volume just in case there's a real world or anything. Like, I need to be able to hear it. And it's like I'm sneaking up to a position where I know that there's quote unquote bad guys or whatever. And you guys, it's like without fail. You're like, hey, did you guys see the baseball game the other day? And you're like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
It's just shut the fuck up. But it's never given my position away at all. So you can keep it at a reasonable volume. If you're worried about, like if you have the earpiece because you're like, oh, I don't want the enemy to hear me, it's kind of a
moot point.
Yeah, you're going to shoot far before.
If you're breaking into their base and you're crawling through their air vent and you're right above them looking through the vent and your radio goes off, that's when you probably need that earpiece.
Sure.
But
that's just Sam Fisher.
Yeah, that's just not going to happen.
There's no Sam Fisher.
Maybe at night when we play night games, I definitely turn it down a little bit more.
Yeah.
But even still, I've never had somebody be like, oh, I just heard a radio, like never, not once.
You're just like, what was that in the woods?
Not even. It's because it's loud to me because it's right here. But to everybody else,
yeah, I believe that.
It's really nothing.
Can I point out that the night games have gotten a lot more fun since the tracer required rule? And now it's like the night vision users and non-night vision users can like actually play together and it's fun. I think, I just want to point that out.
So we have August
night games have
coming
improved
up,
so much.
but September night vision rentals are back.